Hello, everyone. I'm AG Billig, and I'm thrilled to have with us today at this Project of Love vlog, award-winning documentary maker Chelo Alvarez-Stehle. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea. It's really an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you for inspiring women from all around the world to break free from silence and to break free from the drama in their lives, and helping them understand that even the worst situations can be turned into something that can be good and can be of service to other people. For me, this is one of the main takeaways of your amazing documentary.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, it's been a beautiful experience taking this film around the world and really seeing how people are responding to it. We didn't make it with the intention that it was going to make people, to inspire them to talk. I mean, of course, we believe that it's important to break that silence, but we were surprised by the amount of people at every screening that would open their hearts, that would feel really moved to go down back into their lives and realize what had happened to them that was not acceptable. People who came to us asking for help to even report some abuses that were happening recently in their lives. There's been all kinds of experiences, people who enter into catharsis almost, like to the point that we had to invite psychologists and therapists to our screenings to be available as a resource. And it's been very rewarding because at every screening that I've had in Europe, in America, in Mexico, in Paris, I felt, I mean, people have brought tears to my eyes because there's been, after watching the film, they have really empathized with us, with me, with our protagonist survivor, Virginia Isaias, the Mexican woman who was trafficked. So it's been a beautiful experience.
Well, I can tell you brought the tears to our eyes, to the people who were lucky enough to attend the screening in Los Angeles in the month of April of 2018. And I saw that men in the room, they were equally touched by the movie. It wasn't just the women. So I'm interested in knowing about the reactions you had from men around the world.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I've had many men that were waiting for me at the end, telling me, or have expressed even in film festivals, that a man who was presenting us an award, he had tears in his eyes, and he was saying, you know, I've also been the victim of sexual abuse, and this was an actor in Malibu.
Wow.
And who was breaking his own silence and telling us all how this abuse and sexual violence that he experienced as a child had influenced his whole life, and he went into, you know, drugs, etc., etc. And so many men have come to me, have told me, you need to make another film about abuse to men, because there are so many of us, and we don't have a space to vocalize it, to verbalize it, to tell it, to express it. And so that's been very beautiful. There was one man that really, really touched me. This was, the film begins in a little town, beach town in the northern part of Spain. So we were able to take the film to that small town and show it there. And there was a man, a 70-year-old man, who raised his hand and said, you know, I wasn't the victim of abuse, but I was witness of abuse. When I was 15 and I was at school, we knew that there was one young boy like us, 15-year-old, who every day was being abused by this priest. But instead of reporting it or helping him, we used to make fun of him, and we would call him the babe. And I had goosebumps, and the whole audience. I mean, it was really, really amazing, because he's talking about, he was accomplice already at 15. He didn't step out and he didn't put his foot down and said, enough is enough, I'm going to help this victim. And this is how many of us are survivors. There's a huge amount of people who have been abused, men and women, of course, many more women. But there are many of us, men and women, and that are not supporting the victims, that are not supporting people that we suspect that something wrong is being happened to them. And this is where all of society has to play a part in this fight to bring about an end to sexual violence and trafficking. We need to speak out. We need to speak out about our own experiences of abuse and about those who are around us. And we need to speak out when we see someone who is being victimized. We need to speak this truth to power. And we need to fight to stop the impunity and the cover-up by institutions, be it the church, be it the universities, the army, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's. I will go back to that and what triggered you, what inspired you actually to create this wonderful piece of art. But about men, yeah, that's true that women we have a hard time looking at men as victims, and that's true that sometimes they can be victims, and I think they are usually abused by other men, not by women. And also I think for men it can be interesting seeing your movie, because many men, they are fathers, many men, they are brothers, and they wouldn't want their blood related women in their life to go through this kind of sexual abuse. So
yeah, exactly. Many men have come to me with tears in their eyes also because, I feel for my daughter, for my son. And that has been also very beautiful. So to make them alert that this happens everywhere and that they need to help all the victims and all the survivors. Also, there is something important with men that I realized in this process of bringing the film to so many places, which is it's difficult to convey because most of us, we only want to hear about women victims and not men victims. But there are many men victims, and especially a huge amount of men victims of by religious leaders, especially Catholic Church and other churches. And some of the men have been abused by women. I mean, there are mothers who abuse their own children, incest. We were at a film festival here in San Diego, California, and there was a 65-year-old man who said, "I've never said this to anyone, but I want to say that I was abused. I was raped when I was 4 by my nanny, and then my aunt also abused me. And the problem was," he said, "that I used to go after my aunt after that and after other older women because sexuality had been just awakening me. And I was just 6. And he said, and all my life I had this pain inside of me. And many times I tried to talk with my friends, and my friends in a very macho type, he was originally from Mexico. My friends used to say, oh, how lucky you are that you started so young. So there was he said, nobody understood my pain, you know. So we also have to create spaces for men who are victims to speak up, and we have to help them in their process too. But of course, the number of victims, women, is so overwhelming that that's our first priority, you know. And then also there is other type of men that I had the chance to show the film to. And these are the sexual violence offenders. And in prison, people who are serving time for the crimes they committed. And I've had an amazing experience with them because I've visited already 3 times. And there is a group of sexual violence offenders, from pedophiles to rapists to people who are into child pornography, etc., traffickers. They saw the film and they had tears in their eyes too. And they were telling me, I was there with them, and they were saying, I've never felt so much empathy for the victims. Please, they will write me letters later on, even there when I was with them in the Q&A. They were expressing how much they felt and how much they really felt for the crime they committed. This group is a group of people who are undergoing, are in a program that is trying to help them evolve, if you want, come out of that mentality and acknowledge the crime that they did, and then help them do something to repair. because some of them were telling me that they also needed to be heard. They also needed a space to be able to talk. And I said, why? And I said, well, many of them have been abused. Many of them are victims. Not all, but many, a big number of them have been victims too. And they never dealt with it. They never healed. And their way of dealing with it was by hurting other people. So there is a cycle of violence that we need to break at once.
I do believe that the more someone hurts inside, and that goes both for women and men, the more aggressive that person is, whether it's about speech or actions. So actually, I think people who are violent and they cause suffering to other people, they suffer a lot inside, and they need our acceptance and love. So what would you recommend to mothers of sons, because you have a beautiful, amazing daughter, but you are a mother, so you know the feeling. So how can, because I think it's very important the way the mother raises her kids. So what can mothers do with their sons when they are little boys to help them grow into healthy males who embrace their vulnerability, but also their masculine side? So what's to be done there?
Well, there are many things that can be done, but I think the first one is to start teaching that we are all equal, that we are all human beings, that you're not a boy and are going to dress in blue, and you're a girl and you're going to dress in pink. Because starting with that color difference, it just really impacts everything else that we do. I'm a boy and I play soccer or boxing. No, the girl can also play boxing, and we have to start by creating that kind of equality, and also by instilling values of humanness, of human being. I mean, the problem is not so much the genders, is that the gender division is there because we don't have like a humanness feeling. We don't have an experience that we are first human beings and then women and then men, or then whatever gender you choose, So I think the values, the values of humanity, of humanness, of compassion, of respect has to be there from the child when they are 3, 4, 5, when they started to grow up, And then talk to them a lot about what is sexual abuse. Start talking to them when they're 10, because kids are starting to see these things very soon on the screen. They have access to the digital world. I mean, there is now like an epidemic of addiction to pornography among 11 and 12 years old. They're discovering pornography before they are discovering sex in themselves and puberty. Before reaching puberty, they are addicted to porn because they can see it on their digital devices. So having not abandoning your children, not abandoning your son or your daughters, being present with them, being present as they discover the digital world, as they discover their own world, their own bodies. Talk to them, bring those conversations to the table. Don't give them just food. Give them food and company and understanding and questions, and create spaces for that, so that the kids can talk and the sons can talk. The boys need to be very, very respectful with their own body first. Learn that nobody can touch them in the places that are only for them. They're private. They're where your dignity resides, and then teach them to respect the other boys' bodies and the other girls' bodies, and talk to them about the impact that sexual abuse has in people. Because we don't talk about our children about the fact that if someone starts touching you and you allow them, this is going to impact your life forever. And even if they are small, we have to bring the conversation in terms that they can understand, that we have to start talking at very early age, because sexual abuse starts at very early age. So they know that son, daughter, if someone has touched you in a way that you don't like, or kissed you, or asked you to come to a secret place, don't worry, I'm not going to get mad at that person. You have to come to me. Because the problem is that the reason why most children don't approach their parents is because they think that their parents are going to get mad at those people, at the abusers. they're going to kill them or hurt them, and their parents are going to go to prison. So they don't want to lose their parents. Don't tell them anything. No, you have to go to them and say, listen, I just want to help you. I'm here for you. Anything that happened, tell me. That's the kind of relationship that we have to create. I know it's difficult, but we have to enforce it. And then also we have to talk to them a lot about what is it to go to a prostitute. Well, because the boys are going to want, because when they're growing up and they become teenagers and very young age, they start going. I found out very recently that my grandfather and people of his age used to take their sons to prostitutes when they were 13 and 14. Okay, things have changed, but it still hasn't changed that much, because it's still little boys dream with going. They don't know what it is. They feel attracted. I mean, going to a prostitute to have sex for the first time can be really impactful in your life.
Yes.
So we have to talk about sex freely. Sex with love is beautiful. I mean, even if they start early with the girls in their classes, but at least make it beautiful. You know what I mean? I mean, because I don't know how to express this, but it has to come from your heart. It has to come an experience that you enjoyed. You have to respect the other person's body, and then start talking about consent. When someone says no, means no. And that's a very important. The consent the consent conversation has to come over and over and over. If a girl tells you no, if a boy tells you no, don't push it. It's their right. It's worse than stealing. It's worse than killing when you do that to a person. Rape is worse than killing. It's worse than stealing. It's an impact that lasts all your life. Abuse, same thing, sexual abuse.
Yeah, well, I know that everything that happens in our childhood, especially until we are 7, but even later, that's going to impact our life. And I know that it took you 15 years to create Sense of Silence, but actually the seed for this amazing documentary was planted when you were much, much younger.
Yeah, exactly.
With what happened to your sister and you being on the beach and kind of watching.
Yeah, I watched my sister. We were on the beach and I was 10, my sister was 9. And then suddenly a stranger came and took her away, took her to a cabana by the beach and abused her. And we never talked about it in our family, but that seed had been in me. And then one day, 10 years ago, something happened in me, and suddenly that experience came to me, and I realized that was probably the reason why I'm always reporting as a journalist or as a documentary filmmaker, filmmaking, interviewing, and exploring stories of abuse and violence against women. Because of what happened at the beach, I couldn't do anything for her. So when I started exploring this experience, I realized I felt very, very guilty with my sister because I could do nothing to help her. Yeah. And so that was part of that was when I started to take a different approach to this documentary. Because instead of being a reportage about women that have been trafficked, or 1 or 2, 3 women, yes, it still has that component of reportage of these women that have been trafficked that tell us their amazing stories.
Yeah, Virginia, she's amazing.
Amazing. But at the same time, I took a different approach. I made it much more intimate. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to still tell these stories and follow their lives and their beautiful transformation in empowering survivors. But I'm going to do it also with an inner lens. Inner Lens Productions is the name of my company, actually. But with the inner lens, because with my inner lens, I can also echo those stories in myself and what happened in my life. First with my sister, and then after years of working in this documentary too, then I realized that something had happened to me too. And then that's when I decided to turn the camera 180 degrees to myself, my past, my family. And then it became a journey of introspection, a parallel journey where the filmmaker is also revealing what is happening in her life.
Kudos to you and your family, and Virginia, of course, for opening yourself up to the whole world and sharing your stories. I mean, not many people have this courage to tell things as they are. not only in front of the world, but in front of themselves, first of all. And from this point of view, I think the documentary is a wonderful tale about forgiveness too, about forgiving yourself first, because you had that guilt about not being able to help your sister when you were a little girl, but also towards your abuser. So we won't tell who he was, because I'm sure people will see the documentary and they will find out. But I think that's important, because many people, they carry this guilt, and they have the hard time to forgive, and that spoils our life. So
thank you so much. This is a very good question, and actually you've made me think of something that I haven't thought before, so it's very good. It's like when I talk about when the forgiveness issue comes out in my film, I never thought about forgiving myself for the guilt that I felt for my sister. But you are right. I mean, in a way, doing this film has been a way of forgiving myself for that guilt of not having been able to help her. But also, it took me a big, big effort to do this, to put my story and my sister's story and my own story in the film. So much that I had to do 2 years of therapy, which I had never done therapy. And I said, I have to do therapy. I need help to process everything. Because the moment you start confronting the ghosts of the past, what happens is you start to have anxiety. It's funny because I spent over 20 years interviewing victims of sexual violence and trafficking. And now here I am, suddenly confronting myself with my own abuse and the abuse of my sister, that I was like a bystander in her case. And all that was creating me so much anxiety. And I was having the same reactions that the victims have. All my life as a journalist and filmmaker, I wanted to put myself in their shoes of the victim, so in order to better tell their story. And here I am, I'm suffering those reactions. I felt anxiety. I felt the Stockholm syndrome. I wanted to forgive my abuser immediately, but I didn't want to hurt him. I was the bad one, because now I was going to reveal my story, so I felt guilty about revealing my story. So all these complicated sensations, feelings that the victims have, I was having them, because of course I realized that, yes, I'm a victim. Yes, my story was small in physical degree, if you want to compare to Virginia Isaias, who was trafficked and tortured. And I wasn't tortured, but it was a mental torture. My abuse had a huge psychological element on it. So sometimes the psychological abuse also, I mean, it was physical, but I also was psychological, even spiritual. Those type of abuses are very, very hurting, and they really impact you in a deep way. So I had to do therapy, and then I realized that, I can breathe. So what happened is that after I finished the film, I still had a lot of anxiety, especially when I went to Spain to for a festival to screen it. It was the premiere. I started getting awards. I was in the press. My abuser is still alive, and he's still in Spain. So I was really nervous, and I had anxiety. But little by little, by bringing the film to audiences, by seeing the audience's reaction, all that anxiety has disappeared, because I've been all that love that people have shared with me has really calmed me down, and they have helped me to forgive myself. That's been amazing. And also what happens in the film is interesting, because at the end of the film there is a scene, and I'm not gonna reveal it, but something happened that someone asked me, do you forgive your abuser?
Yes.
And that question was so difficult for me. And I know it's very controversial. Some people don't like it. Some people don't like the film because of that, And I'm not even gonna say what I answer, but what I want to say is that forgiveness is a human need. It's a human necessity, and we need to deal with them. As you said, first, the victim needs to forgive themselves. We all made ourselves guilty. We have to forgive us. Second, we need at one point to forgive the abuse or to forgive the violence, to forgive the abuser. But how? It doesn't mean that you're going to go and hug him or her, but it means that you're going to take the load that abuse put on you, that abuser put on you, take that load and shove it, and send it to him or her, to the abuser. It doesn't belong in you. Free yourself from the load. Take that big stone that is, and take it out of your life. And just by that forgiveness, just start moving ahead, looking at the sun, looking and rebuilding your life. And now what happens that your abuser, the violent person, the perpetrator, he has now, he knows that now he has to do something with that crime that he did, with that stone that he has, with that hurt. And I talk to the sexual violence offenders in prison, and they tell me, well, I want to ask my victim to forgive me, but here they don't let me access to her. And I said, yeah, the victim has the right to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. I don't even want to forgive you. You have the right not to forgive. Now, you are here, and you can do something for the victim, for your victim and the other victims. And interestingly enough, after watching the movie, one of the sexual violent offenders asked me, well, what did you talk about forgiveness and reparation. So do you think that being here, because I'm here in prison, this is already repairing? And I said, no, you are here because the society has imposed you a sentence, and you're here because the society wants you to spend this time paying for what you did in a way, and also hopefully thinking about it and reflecting on it and then evolving from that. But when I talk about reparation, what I mean is that you voluntarily, you have to do something creatively. It has to come from you, from your heart. It doesn't have to come from the society, the judges, the system, the justice system. And they were like, you know what I mean? So there are many ways in which they can do that. They can, I said, you can write a book, or you can do something for the victims, start working from them, even from prison.
One other thing that I think your movie does is that it brings people together, and I can tell. By the way, by the time the movie ended and your Q&A ended after the screening, there was so much connected that I could feel the connectedness and the love in the room. I mean, it was the first time we met each other, you and me, and then Virginia, and we hugged, and it was like kind of we knew each other for a lifetime, and that was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, it's true that it brings people together. And, many people who come to the screenings, they tell me, you know what? This film has inspired me to break the silence, not on abuse, because I wasn't victim of abuse, but in our family, there are secrets that we don't talk about. And they don't have to do with violence, sexual violence, but still they are there and we're not talking about it. And now I want to go to my family and break that silence. So it helps people break the silence in different levels, not only with sexual violence. So I think it's very positive in that sense, because it's very beautiful. It's by bringing my whole family into the film, almost like, bringing them and get all of us naked in front of the audiences. Audiences feel a big empathy, and they reflect on their own family life, and they want to bring this positive outcome. Because one thing that I wanted to add, because you asked me in the beginning, is, and I thought it was a very good, important question, is that the reason why I do this work, many people ask me, why do you always dealing with, sexual violence, these dark subjects and trafficking? And I said, well, there is a reason why I do them. First, because of course it's necessary to stop them. But also, the reason why I've been working on this for over 20 years is because I always find the light in the heart of the survivors, that are, when they are able to find their own light, when they are able to find their own power, that inspires me. And if I can bring this to the audiences, I think in the end, it's a message of hope. Some people say, no, I don't want to see your film. Some friends tell me, oh, it's going to be very depressing. And I say, no, it's not depressing. Yeah, it moves you. It really impacts you because you see the horrors that are happening. But at the same time, you see that hope and that beautiful transformation and evolution of the survivors. And like Virginia Isaias and Anu Tamang in Nepal. And they become these amazing, inspiring women, in spite of everything that happened to them. So it's like, wow, what a strength has the human dignity. Virginia Isaias, the survivor from trafficking in Mexico, she always says, they never touch my soul. They touch my body in horrible ways, but they never touch her soul. And now she's pouring her soul to other people.
Yeah, I could feel that. And that's interesting how we can find actually our life purpose in the most dark days, dark moments of our life.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So obviously this is part of your life purpose. And I'd like to talk for you to talk a little bit about it and how did you find it?
Well, it's a very interesting question too, because in the film opens with a quote by Prem Rawat that says that in the middle of darkness there is a light, there is a rhythm, the hope maker, and that's the heart, the hope maker. And I love that quote because this is the purpose of my work. I mean, you kind of nail it there, because without bringing that light over the darkness, there will be no purpose for me to just signal at all the darkness that is in the world. Super depressive, and we will all kind of don't want to live in this world, you know what I mean? But yet, in the midst of all this craziness and darkness, if we can lamp a little light, if we can be that lamp, that little candle, that candle can lit many other candles. So for me, that's beautiful. That's why I want that little candle in the middle of the forest, dark forest. One little candle is all I need to walk the next step and the next step and the next step. So it's been really a gift for me to be able to work in these issues. It's not easy. As an independent documentary filmmaker, it's very hard to raise funds for it. But we had incredible donors that have come up. We had a great executive producer, Deirdre Droney, that has really brought many donations from her friends and has done an amazing job. And I had an amazing team of a crew, of excellent filmmakers that have donated their time over and over again. Without them, I couldn't have done this film. So I think the film, as I said in the screen in the beginning, has received so much love since its inception that now it's kind of giving back this love. I'm surprised. So I can't tell you how grateful I am. I'm sorry. I can't tell you how grateful I am for having been able to be a part of this film, which is bigger than me and of all of us, because really now it's giving me so much in terms of the revenue of this film, of this documentary film, really is in love, in inspiration, in fulfillment.
Thank you for touching my heart in this way. It was a beautiful experience. So what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the documentary? How can we support you so you can show it in as many places in the world as possible?
Yeah, thank you. We have an impact campaign where we're trying to take it to places that they cannot pay anything, they can't pay for our travel. That we're taking it to prisons, for example. We're taking it to communities. We want to take you to different places in the world, South America, Mexico is so much needed there too. And so if people can go to our website, sandsofsilence.org, you can put it there, and in the video maybe they can go there and then click donate. Donations are tax deductible in the US, but any donations can be done through credit card from any country in the world, and they're very appreciated. It's been a film that has been supported by people, and now it continues to be.
We shouldn't forget that we are all humans, and there is a light in in each one of us. And when we see the light in the other people, we help them see that light too. And as you said, forgiveness is part of who we are. And yeah,
Thank
just
you so much. Now you're touching me. You make me hear so much.
so thank you so much, Chelo. It's been a real joy watching your movie first, then being there and listening to the Q&A, and finally getting to talk to you one-on-one, and then sharing with the other people around the world. Good luck, and we are here to support you anytime you need us. So please let us know.
Thank you so very much. Okay, bye-bye.